Hey, Yarn here. I just want to go over some of the strats and tips about Forza Horizon 5's hide-and-seek game mode that came out several months ago at the time of this video. Some players have expressed mixed feelings about the game, saying it was more of a cat-and-mouse game, that the hider has all the advantages, and the seeker always knows where the hider is based on the radar. There's a whole lot more, but let's cover some of these things one at a time. I should mention these are based off of my experience after playing thousands of these hide-and-seek game matches. Before jumping into the match, the game will automatically assign who is a seeker and who is the hider. There can be up to 5 seekers in a match and only 1 hider. Let's take a look at this from the seeker perspective first. The seeker has a choice between multiple vehicles, ranging from street, rally, and off-road vehicles. Most new players often choose the Lamborghini or the GTR, which is often a clear indicator that your team will most likely lose if your team is mainly made up of said vehicles.
Bad luck, Seekers! It is the clock! And you! Congratulations! There's a hider up there, Seekers! Team Seek activated!
I am not generalizing the Lamborghini drivers. There are some very good players who prefer this vehicle, but most new players are especially drawn to the Lamborghini. High-ranking players often choose something more balanced for street and off-road. The Mitsubishi and Subaru both are street and off-road balanced and have a good recovery after being hit with the hider's chase breaker. Recovery isn't as good as the Ariel, however, the Ariel has the best recovery after being chase broken due to its light weight. Although the Ariel is lightweight, it can be difficult to drive and handle due to it being rear-wheel drive. It is also the slowest seeker vehicle, only being able to top out at around 155 miles per hour. Some high-ranking players go for the Toyota, which is surprisingly quick with great off-road capabilities. It is a very heavy vehicle, which also has the worst recovery after being chase broken. It is also not the best at handling sharp turns, but it makes up for it with its overall speed and terrain capabilities. I won't talk about every car, as that is an entire video on its own. Taking a look at the hider vehicles, there are 4 to choose from. From experience, most players will choose the Ford as it has the most power. However, it is the heaviest, largest, and bulkiest hider vehicle. And the Ford is also very loud, meaning an experienced seeker can pinpoint one of these from behind buildings and walls over a block away. The Jeep, like the Ford, is also very loud and has the tendency to flip when doing sharp turns. Out of all the hider vehicles, I've lost the most matches with the Jeep due to it flipping over or giving away my position due to the noise it makes. However, it is the shortest vehicle, meaning you can fit it in some of the very tight places around the map.
Next time they'll never find...
The Chevy has the highest top speed and seems to perform the best over rough terrain. It is also very loud, but it makes up for that with its faster top speed and handling. It is the only hider vehicle that can easily reach 130 miles per hour. Finally, the Mercedes. This is the quietest hider vehicle that often throws off some of the top players when playing stealth. If you like circling around small areas while maintaining high speeds, this is the vehicle for you. It is certainly not as fast as the Chevy, and for some reason it is always low on brake fluid because the brake lights are always on for the seekers at least. When you play the Mercedes during rain or night, just beware your brake lights will give you away. Let's talk about the hider compass or the radar. Covering just this radar is an entire video on its own, but I'll briefly go over how it works. Yes, it points you to the general direction of where the hider is and fills completely when you are within the vicinity of the hider. The larger the white indicator, the closer the hider. Okay, we all know that. But there is a way to read it. Take a look at this clip. The radar is pointing approximately at the 10 o'clock position here. Do you think the hider is here? Or up here instead? The hider is actually here. I know this because if the hider were here, this white indicator will be much larger and will fill as soon as I get up this hill. But it does not. Take a look. Since this is Guanajuato, the fastest way out of the city towards the hider at this current position is to continue forward and make a left onto this dirt road where the hider was previously at. This is one way to read it. New players will run into this and will often think that the hider is the next left turn, which is incorrect in this case. Here's another example. It may be easy to say the hider is in the city, maybe right here or here. Now that we are closer to the city again, I look to the right and can already tell the hider is outside the city based on how small the white indicator is on the radar. They should be approximately here and continuing west. By reading the radar not only based on where it's pointing, but how large the white indicator is, I was able to catch up. Now for this clip, I knew the hider was headed back into the city based on how close to the right they were to me. With a few glances to the right, I was able to confirm that they were in the city. But let's back up. Could I have made a right turn here instead? Of course, but the hider could have proceeded outside the city like in the previous example, and I would have been far behind due to the curvy roads. Most players seem to stop proceeding forward as soon as they fill their radar. It makes sense to do that since they are within the vicinity of the hider, but this vicinity is rather large. When the radar first fills completely, you are only at the edge of this invisible circle. Whenever possible, try to anticipate when the circle will fill completely and center your vehicle so the radar is pointing at 12 o'clock. In this example, I initially thought the hider was coming towards me, which was the reason why I slowed down and turned around. I realized they stopped moving, so I positioned my vehicle so the radar was pointing as close to 12 o'clock as possible before it fills up. This meant the hider was directly in front of me now. I just need to make a mental note of that and search the vicinity closer towards the middle. I find the hider quickly while risking a hit from their chase breaker to at least get a ping for my team in this very tight area. Using this strategy, it is very effective when you know the map well. After recovering from being chase broken and your radar does this can be really confusing to pinpoint where the hider can be. Pay close attention to the radar. Right before the chase breaker effect wears off, you can see the radar briefly pointing towards my 10 o'clock. The hider is over there, and that is the reason why I make a left turn towards the mountain. Unfortunately, the hider was already on their way behind us, forcing everyone to turn around. Knowing this, it can be effective and can put you back in the right track if no one pings the hider while you are chase broken. Here's another example. I was still within the vicinity of the hider when I recovered from the chase breaker. But paying close attention to the radar, I was able to determine the hider went down this road instead and found them again. Because they are driving a Mercedes, I could not rely on the engine noise for tracking. Instead, I had to rely on other details, like any NPC vehicles on the side of the road the hider may have hit, or perhaps these suspicious tire marks that are leading me towards the right. Now how do you know if the hider is coming straight at you? This is a known strategy for a while, and it's a bad strategy because it can go wrong in so many ways, like for this hider. I knew this hider was coming right at us just from how quickly the radar is moving. Hiders like to use this strategy as they believe the seekers will all come towards them, and the hider can hit the chase brake on the entire group and get away. Instead of that happening, I diverged from their path, hit the ping too soon unfortunately, but I was still able to keep up with the hider at a safe distance while everyone else tried catching up. Take a look at the full video of this game session on my channel if you'd like to see it. Here's another example of the hider coming straight at the group. The driver behind me knew exactly what was happening and got out the way of the hider. Of course, the Lamborghini driver goes right at the hider as the initial pursuer backs off to let the Lamborghini take the hit. Unfortunately, this strategy did not work for this hider, and the game lasted less than 1 minute against 3 experienced seekers who knew how to read the radar. There's so much more to cover about the radar, but I'll leave it at that for now and talk about seeker strategies since we're going towards that topic anyway. Like you just witnessed earlier, don't try to play chicken with the seekers, especially when you don't know who you're up against. You could get lucky at times against inexperienced seekers, as this was one of the very first strategies developed when the game first came out. But that strategy is not reliable anymore because players are becoming more experienced. It really only takes one experienced seeker to end the game, assuming the rest of the team can track the hider and take the hits. I can't help it but to think of it this way: you need the hider to be dumb, but you need your team to be dumber. What I mean is, you need to stand by at a safe distance and hope the hider hits the chasebreaker on your entire team. Then you go in after the hider to fill the detection bar as much as possible as they're on cooldown. You also need a mental timer of when the hider can't use the chasebreaker again. Since your team is dumber and if the hider hits you with the chasebreaker, your team will most likely lose. If you have a feeling that the hider is ready to hit the chasebreaker, back off and just follow and ping from a safe distance until your team catches up. Let them take the hit again, then rinse and repeat. Hiders who are dedicated to this playstyle will oftentimes chase you to try to hit the entire team since they know you will come after them after they hit your team. This can go south very fast for the hider, but if you are careful as a seeker, you can stay out of range of the chasebreaker as your team applies pressure. Because the seeker detection is constantly filling, the hider will have to use the chasebreaker even if they know you are not within their range. This is because if they don't hit it, they lose due to the pressure of your team. If they hit it, then their last effort is to outmaneuver you, which they may or may not succeed depending on the location and your driving skills. When you're working with another seeker, you may encounter this exchange process. What I mean is, this is when the hider makes a complete 180. Let's say you are on the hider applying pressure, and one of your teammates are staying back to prevent being hit by the chasebreaker. The hider heads towards your teammate, thinking you will follow them so that way they can hit both of you. Instead of you following the hider towards your teammate who is waiting to pursue, you exchange roles as soon as the hider heads to your teammate. The hider may hit their chasebreaker on your teammate instead, thinking they may have hit you too, but did not. Now you become the pursuer as your teammate recovers. Also, you'll be facing the correct direction to pursue. Here's an example. I'm joined with another seeker applying pressure to the hider. I know their cooldown for the chasebreaker is almost complete. Here's the other driver waiting to pursue after we get hit. At this moment, I knew the hider was going to head towards the pursuer, so I stayed back and we exchange roles so they get hit and I can pursue instead.
Don't lose them now!
Here's another example. This one is a little different because the hider tries to 180 too soon, so that's why I pushed them a little further to give some space between me and my buddy here. However, the Lamborghini behind me is just asking to get hit by the chasebreaker instead of just staying back. In this example, the exchange did not work as the other driver continued following the hider towards me, causing both of us to get hit and increasing the chance of losing to the hider. They did choose the GTR, so that's expected of the playstyle, I guess. Sometimes you can bait the hider into hitting the chasebrake, which will allow a great chance to win as a seeker. With that said, this is not a 1 versus 1 game where one seeker goes against one hider. Most hiders aren't just going to let you waltz right up to them, you know? Just keep that in mind. The seeker will always lose unless the hider isn't very skilled. Sometimes you can bait the hider into using the chasebreaker without hitting you. But most of the time, there needs to be a team collaboration, and if you do not trust your team, you must play the playstyle of letting your team get hit and you pursue afterwards.
Congratulations, Seekers!
If your team just can't catch up to the hider but you can, just follow the hider and keep pinging. The more you travel and the more pings you get, the more points you earn in the end. That's because the XP system for this game is broken, but that's a topic for another video too.
A rare
Let's quickly talk about the ping since we're already on it. The ping doesn't always land, by the way. Even a simple bush or cactus can prevent the ping from reaching the hider, so it's always best to wait until you have good line of sight.
What the fuck?
Some short walls will also not allow the ping to travel through. As dumb as it may look, the ping will also not land on the hider over this barrier. This seeker most likely tried to ping me, but because of the barrier, the ping could not land on me. So we spent over 40 seconds running around this barrier with them calling out they found me, over and over again, and eventually a second seeker finally sees what's happening, and even they could not ping me. What gives? The ping has a farther reach than the chasebreaker, but it cannot go through walls, buildings, trees, roads, etc.
What the fuck?
The best way to make sure you land the ping is to have direct line of sight with the hider when they are within a certain range. The ping used to have a 10-second effect, but it was increased to 12 seconds to reveal the hider longer. I guess they increased the duration because people kept saying the hider wins too often. How about try playing hider against 5 high-ranked seekers. You will miss that 40-second cooldown on the chasebreaker and 10-second ping reveal. It is very difficult. This right here is probably the scariest seeker formation to see as a hider. With all 5 high-level seekers lined up right behind you like this, you're in deep doo-doo, my friend. You can hit the chasebreaker, but the ones behind will catch right up. But don't worry, just wait only 50 seconds, not 40. Only 50 to use the chasebreaker again. Anyway, I digress. As for the chasebreaker, it is such a great power-up. It goes through everything, trees, houses, walls, roads, etc. Not only can you use it to slow down seekers, you can use it to glide over rough terrain if you know the seekers cannot catch up soon. It does have a shorter range compared to the ping, however, but if you want to remain undetected, you can hit the chasebreaker early from behind an obstacle to prevent the seeker from pinging you, since the ping requires line of sight. Since it also turns your vehicle into a ghost, you can glide through certain objects, which prevents your vehicle from slowing down due to hitting bushes, light trees, logs, etc. This is great when you need to quickly cover terrain but still need speed. Some seekers can't even control their vehicles to achieve these speeds at this location, and we're doing around 130 miles an hour off-road in a hider vehicle? That's amazing! Ghost mode lasts only 15 seconds, then there's a remaining 35 seconds until you can use the chase break again. We've covered some of the seeker strategies, so let's take a look at some of the hider ones. As mentioned before, the strats where you play chicken against the seekers or wait for all the seekers to bunch up around you to hit the chase breaker, those are not reliable, especially against experienced seekers. However, in desperate situations towards mid to late game, getting all the seekers around you to hit them all at once, it is still relevant. Just don't rely entirely on this strategy. There are many hider playstyles, but I'll go through some of the ones I found to be successful in most situations. I always need to have a place to be. Too many times do I see hiders stopping and going, trying to figure out which way to turn into. This slows them down tremendously. Pick a direction and commit to it. Loops around the maps are especially effective on Guanajuato, but the terrain outside the city can still pose a challenge. I have learned different routes for each map, so that gives me somewhere to be as it ties in with my first advice. I recommend you to create your own routes for each map, that way you are more familiar to where things are. Guanajuato is the easiest to hide using this strategy, whereas Playa Azul is somewhere in between. Seekers can still cut through the forest of Playa Azul to intercept you, but it won't give it to them for free, unlike Mulegé. Mulegé is the most difficult for loops because seekers can intercept you by predicting your path, so always have a backup plan if you see this happening. Lastly, is to keep moving. If you keep moving, you have speed even if you're just cruising. If you can remain undetected doing so, that's even better. If you stay in one hiding location against inexperienced seekers, you might get away doing so. In this clip, these Lamborghini... God damn it, I did it again! In this clip, these seekers would have never been able to scare this hider out of here. Up against experienced seekers, someone will eventually find you. When they do, at least have a way out and another place to go. Sometimes you may have all the Seekers around you. You should really try to not let this happen. If the Seekers are experienced, there will be at least one person sitting out, and that person is waiting to pursue you after you hit the Seekers around you with the Chasebreaker. That guy is the guy you have to be afraid of. Just like what I mentioned earlier when discussing Seeker strategies, this is a very unreliable strategy against experienced Seekers.
Perhaps a new hiding strategy. New hiding strategy.
Let's talk more about a few things you should not do as the hider. Back in my early days of hide and seek, I was one who depended on this strategy. It worked sometimes, but I eventually realized it was not reliable long term. If experienced Seekers can catch up to you every time, the secret detection bar will fill up, and eventually it will fill all the way. That is a mathematical certainty with this strategy, and the reason why I do not like it, especially when you have a Seeker sitting out waiting for you to take the bait, and you're trying to chase them to hit the entire group? Look at that secret detection bar!
Looks like the game is up for Team Hide.
Since I only use this strategy in dire situations, I recommend preventing yourself from having a group of Seekers surrounding you in the first place. If you have an experienced group of Seekers on you and you have no cover, you're most likely done for, except if something like this happens. That hider was so fortunate. Although the game wants you to behave like traffic, an experienced Seeker can pick you out almost immediately. There are many reasons how, but I'll go through a few. In this case, this truck is the only visible one in the direct location of where the radar is pointing. Same goes with this truck. Unfortunately for this hider, they are using the keyboard, which makes their steering very jittery as seen here. This is a dead giveaway this is the hider. The same can also be said here with this hider too. For those who play with the keyboard, this is a very huge disadvantage as the hider unfortunately. Here's an example of a hider cruising in a gear not high enough. NPC vehicles make very little engine noise. This hider was also a little too loud as I was able to hear them as soon as I got onto the road. This hider uses the Mercedes truck and was able to get away since this is the quietest hider vehicle. I assumed the hider was heading northwest as the Bronco, that was just hit by the Chasebreaker, was heading the same way. Unfortunately, I was wrong as I couldn't hear the hider. Other small details are hiders do not have front license plates when compared to an NPC. NPCs have much darker tints compared to the hider vehicle. The color choice is also important. I want to talk about the Jeep specifically. The Jeep has many color options, but some players choose a solid color. NPC Jeeps do not come in solid colors as they have the black hardtop trim. This hider, however, chose a solid color on the Jeep and was pointed out immediately. This is a clear giveaway. This hider sticks out due to the color choice of their vehicle, and now they're driving 30 miles an hour in first gear as you can tell how loud it is. There is still so much to cover, but this video alone would take like 6 hours long if we were to cover everything. There are other playstyles, quirks on each map, and general Forza mechanics that can give you an advantage as both Seekers and hiders, how to track hiders properly when the radar fills up completely, lots of things. I might talk about these individually in another video. Of course, there are glitches too. Some are easy to perform and access by anyone, and are good for throwing off unsuspecting Seekers. Others are more difficult, which is why I consider them dirty if a hider uses them. If a hider uses a dirty glitch, that is the only time I'll use it against them as well, so two could play at that game. I hope some of these tips can help someone out. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, these are things I've gathered from my personal experience only. Maybe you may have a different take? Let me know. I'll see you in the next one.